All right, so it is 12:45. I'll go ahead and get started. Hello, I hope you're having a nice day. Thanks for tuning in to this video and today's live stream. Um, Obviously, I'm going to be working on a self-portrait painting here. Let me just turn down my music through these ads. Yeah, so before I get started in the process of actually painting, I wanted to just take a few minutes and talk about some of the inspiration behind the idea for this self-portrait. If you're someone who's been watching my videos recently, then you may have already watched a couple of the self-portrait drawing, kind of like concept sketch, designing process, and that's been an interesting series so far because I don't think I'm actually going to end up using any of those ideas. So, I keep going back and forth between deciding whether or not to incorporate my face in this painting. And I've done portraits both ways, where it's more about the body and it's more about my hands or a different feature other than my face. But a couple nights ago, I was also looking up some examples of self-portrait paintings by artists who I really am influenced by and inspired by. And one of those artists is the Italian, I don't know if he would call himself a surrealist, but he definitely inspired a lot of these surrealist painters, and the artist is Giorgio de Chirico. And I have an example of one of his self-portraits here that I would like to share. Let me find the right... Here we go. This is one of his paintings that he made. I think it's just titled Self-Portrait, but as I was looking up artists like Frida Kahlo, Rembrandt, Van Gogh, De Chirico came up on a list of self-portrait painters, and he's somebody I've looked at before. I have a book on him, and I was hoping that this painting would be in the book, so I didn't have to download an image and put that in my presentation today. But the book that I have doesn't include that painting, which was kind of a bummer. There are a few other self-portraits in here of his, but when I saw this one online, I immediately gravitated towards it because I've been considering a double self-portrait for this project. And as you'll see in a second here, my panel is a landscape format that is a little bit more narrow than his canvas, but it has a similar type of ratio. So I could see, a similar sense of proportion with the body in the painting. And, so I found this image and thought this would be a great jumping off point for my painting tonight or today. And we'll see what happens. You might be able to tell I am sick. I think I caught a cold from my wife, who is a high school teacher, and or my brother, who was sick last week. So I was able to outrun the cold for a while, but it sounds like I am coming up on being sick for a few days, which is going to be a bummer. But I'm on a roll with live streaming, and I thought, I need to work on this portrait painting and don't really have time to waste. So, we'll go ahead and switch screens here now and we can get started. So here's my setup for today. Again, I'm just using my one phone. I only have one phone, but I'm only using one device to record the video for the two windows. And it took a while to kind of situate my camera of my phone in a position where we would be able to see the panel and the palette. But I had to really mess around with the settings of the palette video to be able to show you a closer view of what I'm mixing up here. I'm trying to find another glove, so bear with me while I grab a few more things before I get started. Turn the music back up. trying out a different royalty-free, copyright-free playlist today. We'll see how these songs sound. Let me grab another glove. If anyone wants to see examples of other self-portrait paintings that I've made, please go visit my website, akunaarts.com. You can find the link to my website in the description of this video or on my channel homepage. But in the portfolio, especially the studio portfolio, you'll see a bunch of different self-portraits that I've made over the years. The image that is the thumbnail for this live stream video at the moment, I'm sure by the time the recording is published, I'll change the, I might change the image, but this is the painting, just for a sense of scale, that's in the thumbnail. So, and that was in the preview intro of this video. It's a really small little 5x7 self-portrait made using a mirror. And it's funny because I'm wearing the same jacket today and my hair is very similar in length. So it might look a lot like this. That wasn't really planned, but it's just kind of ironic that it's going to happen this way. But I wanted to show you the scale of that painting. A couple other things I'm already starting to think about. So in De Chirico's painting, on the left side is a image of a bust. I think it's like a plaster or ceramic or maybe even stone carved self-portrait sculpture. And I like that it creates this mirroring, doubling effect of the subject, his self-portrait. I don't have anything like that, and I don't plan on really sculpting something. I think this painting by De Chirico is more of a source of inspiration for the composition, right? I'm not going to try to quote too many moments from his painting because I don't really want to create this direct dialogue to a single painting in art history. I think this is more of a interesting example of presenting yourself in through two different portraits, right? And something that did cross my mind is that, I could mirror, I have a mirror that's right off screen to the right over here. Once I'm done with this portrait, I could always do a second one also from a mirror reflection. But, I like this idea of an inanimate object representing the self, and some of you who watch this may, if you're friends of mine that I've known for years, especially in grade school or high school, you might remember that I was the mascot when I was in middle school and in high school. And the mascot for both schools was a falcon. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently, this idea of a mask or a costume, and this character idea. I'm also doing this art servancy residency. It was technically through the year of 2024, but I still have to finish some of those pieces. And part of the inspiration or research for the work I'm making for the art servancy project is dealing with local birds and relationships of birds to their environments. And in particular, I've been thinking a lot about the pileated woodpecker, which, is a totally separate species of bird than a falcon. But, I could see this idea of the body, like a anthropomorphic sort of example of the body and a bird. So I'm tempted to do some sort of mascot reference on the left side of the painting, but I don't know if that's going to happen at this point. Today I'm just going to try to focus on blocking in and trying to get quite a bit of progress done on my portrait over on the right side here. And like I said, I'm going to try to use a similar ratio of scale of the head to what De Chirico has in his painting over here. The other thing that you'll notice in the foreground is this little like tangerine orange in his painting. And this is the one other area where I could see myself maybe doing a nod or a quote, a visual quote to his painting. So I did bring an orange down from our fruit basket upstairs. And I think it would be kind of, I don't know, interesting or maybe a little bit funny to have the sticker of the orange in the painting. You know, if it was sort of sitting on a little shelf down in the foreground, that would be interesting. But I like this organic, very, ephemeral type of subject, like the fruit, So anyway, we'll see what happens, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. I don't know how much I'll be talking today in this video just because I'm not feeling well and my voice sounds very stuffy, so it's probably kind of annoying to listen to. But if I think of anything that feels really, important to the process, I'll probably share that with you. All right, let's get started. If anyone has any questions or ideas, just want to say hi, feel free to add comments to the video. I need to grab more of my gel medium. Let's see. So I like to buy Oleo gel. It's a linseed oil based gel medium from Rublev, and I buy it in a little like 16-ounce jar, and then sometimes I'll put it in to empty aluminum tubes. That way I can travel with my medium if I'm painting in plein air. Okay, let's slide this over just a hair. I'm going to take down DeChirico's painting, unless I, want to talk about it. So I'm mixing up a little bit of burnt umber and ultramarine blue. My surface is toned with green gold. It's a color from Gamblin that I rarely use. I wanted just some kind of a green background for this figurative painting, so that way the warmth and color of my skin tone will interact in an interesting sort of simultaneous contrast way with the complement of the greens. Right now I only have one overhead like daylight bulb over my easel and my palette. So the light that's casting, over my head is only from one light source, and then I'm backlit, kind of. Not really. There's just LED lights along the wall behind me, so there's a pretty distinct, contrast between my hair and the wall behind me. So I kind of like that, my right side of my face is more in shadow, and my left side and my forehead are all catching a lot more of the light that's overhead. So I'm going to start out with this lighting and then decide if it needs to be brighter or if I need to bring in another light bulb and rearrange my setup here, but I don't really want to have to do that. Okay, so we're just mixing up a dark earthy color here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to bring back DeChirico's painting just so I can use it as a reference for the ratio of my head to the painting. So I'm just looking over at my computer and mapping out like where his self-portrait kind of ends. Just so I have a zone of area here to fit this in. Maybe I don't know, I kind of like how close his head is to the side of his canvas. And it feels like he's very close to us. Like he's almost crammed into that corner, which is an effect that I also really like a lot. So now I'm looking at my mirror. Kind of have messy hair today, but there's some interesting lines. Just gonna soften everything here. I mean, the tricky thing is that because my canvas is a lot wider than his, the ratio of the scale is going to be a little bit less balanced or intense in terms of being like crammed. So I feel like maybe I should make my portrait smaller and show a bit more negative space around my head. So I think I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit. So I should probably actually wipe a bit more off of here. Burnt umber and alizarin, maybe a little bit of white and yellow ochre. Maybe a little bit of Portland warm gray just to lighten things up, and a touch of medium. Okay, so let's say my hair is like here. So right now I'm just grouping my hair and the shadow side of my head together into one big shape. That way I can just keep focusing on the larger relationships of the proportions. I can also simplify a lot of the information on this side of the head, and I think that'll help convey a bit more of the volume. Let's grab a smaller brush. Do a little bit more drawing. It's funny, I spent a few weeks just making sketches and drawings and trying to come up with a plan for this painting, and I think I had like I don't know, 4 different ideas, 4 or 5. Didn't go with any of them. You know, it's like, why did I even make all those drawings? But I think it's just another example of this idea that even if you don't go with a plan that you're considering, I think just by drawing and brainstorming, you know, you end up getting closer to the idea that you eventually want to have. And you know, it can be easy to feel like, oh, that was a waste of my time, but really it's all the same process. It's all connected. It's all part of one big goal in making all of the work I'm making. Just trying to map out some of the key landmarks still to make sure that I have my proportions generally in the right place. And I'm trying not to work too quickly in terms of like finding the exact shape or angle of something. I just want to be a bit more expressive at this point in mapping things out. Trying to think about my glasses still. Don't want to get so far that I don't feel like putting my glasses in, so I'm going to try to do that sooner than later. A little bit more ultramarine blue. I think my green gold layer is still a little tacky. It would have been probably smart to let it dry for like 2 or 3 more days, but it was dry to the touch, so I'm not worried about that color really jeopardizing whatever I'm putting in the painting, but it's more of the surface quality now. It's a little too sticky for what I'm used to and what I like. I prefer if my paint just glides without any interruption, so I'm noticing a little bit of drag. But that's also giving some of my shapes a nice expressive edge. So, you know, there's always pros and cons for things like that. Just bringing in a really dark cool where I can see like the grouping of my beard hairs down here. I'll just kind of scumble this around over here. to that bigger brush. Let's put a little bit of my lip color in there, just so I can get rid of some of that green. Oh, excuse me.
Looking to start fresh? Shop Etsy to update your space with wood shelving under $50 and customize your style with personalized tees, sweatshirts, and jewelry under $50. For home and style finds to help you start fresh, Etsy has it.
Hey, there's the new guy. He moved into Sheila's apartment downstairs.
That's Landon? I can see his rifles at work. So bars.
Hey, Danny, welcome to the building. Want to join? We're grilling. Yeah, sure. Sweet, sweet. Hey, just wondering, what's your mother's maiden name?
Wait, what? Don't listen to him, Danny. Anyway, what was the name of the street you grew up on? Make your next move fast and easy with AT&T Fiber with all five and get a signal so strong everywhere will make it, even your neighbors.
Limited availability. Comes in requires snippets and additional charge.
Some people just know you can save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first at 888-ALLSTATE or allstate.com. Like you know to check fuel up gas first before road tripping through the desert.
Empty? Seriously? Maybe I can walk.
Yeah, checking first is smart. So if you want to save money, check Allstate first at 888-ALLSTATE or allstate.com.
Maybe I can't.
You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Norfolk, Illinois.
This playlist is not doing it for me. Alright, well, it's a little slower, but this is more of the pace I'm looking for right now. don't know what I'm going to do in the background of this painting, but I just need to get rid of some of this green. But it's definitely likely that I might have to paint over all of this background area once I know what I'm going to do in the background. But for now, I think this is going to at least help me gauge some of the color properties of the portrait. One of the things I do like about Takiriko's painting is that he has his hand coming up and touching his face, and I've been thinking about maybe doing something similar for mine. Maybe I could be holding something,
Sir, you can't use our
but
But Carmack says
yeah, I don't know.
why can't you
We'll have to see. I haven't decided yet what I want to do,
home improvement store. Why
but
is the water purple?
just thought I'd share that while I'm thinking about it.
And are those sets of gambles?
I needed the full experience?
Once you experience CarMax, you won't settle for anything less. Shop online, see it in person. Visit CarMax.com.
Just gonna try to soften some of this edge up here,
By checking Allstate first.
just to keep things a little bit more organic.
Like, check you have gas first before road trip is better.
Empty? Seriously? Maybe I can walk.
Yeah, checking first is smart. So if you want to save money, check Allstate first at Allstate or Allstate.com.
Maybe I can.
You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings are
Taking a dry brush here and just softening a lot of this dark mass.
Good from Kind Snacks. Good looking, good feeling. Good eating, good tasting. Good everything. Because with Kind Snacks, you don't have to compromise between what tastes good and feels good. Each bar is packed with wholesome ingredients like almonds and peanuts, and delicious flavors like dark chocolate and caramel. Kind Snacks are good and good for you. That's all kinds of good. Tap the banner to shop now.
Ah, time for a relaxing bubble bath.
Sir, you can't use our bathtubs.
But CarMax has test drives. Why can't you have test baths?
Because this is a home improvement store. Why is the water purple? Did you bring your own bath bomb? And are those scented candles?
I needed the full experience.
Once you experience CarMax, you won't settle for anything less. Shop online, see it in person. Visit CarMax.com.
Some people just know they can save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first at 888-ALLSTATE or Allstate.com. Like you know to check your sunroof is closed first before driving to the car wash.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, no, 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 no. Wait, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah, checking first is smart. So if you want to save money, check Allstate first at 888-ALLSTATE or Allstate.com. You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates Northbrook, Illinois.
to get up and stretch because my left trap muscle by my neck gets super stiff when I sit and paint like this. Oh man. I don't know why this happens to me all the time. Other painters that paint while they're sitting down don't seem to have this problem. But if anyone has any ideas on ways to avoid getting cramps in your trap muscles, let me know. Because this always happens when I'm, especially if I'm painting like a self-portrait like this where my head is slightly turned. I don't know if maybe that's why this is happening, but man, this also happened when I was painting portraits of other people a few weekends ago. But it's hard to concentrate when my muscles are cramping like that. Oh man. I'm right-handed, so it's like my left arm just kind of sits and doesn't move when I'm painting like this. So I don't know if it's just like a posture thing or because my head is turned. But it happened also when I was just looking straight ahead for portraits of friends of mine a few weekends ago. So it's not, I don't think it's because my head is slightly turned this way, you know, to look at the mirror. But anyway, so I might be taking a couple of breaks here for that reason. Just want to go in and soften some of these edges here.
might find purpose in a forest or on a mountain, in an aircraft hangar, or at a secure, undisclosed location, or just beyond where you are right now. With over 500 Army civilian careers to choose from, find your next level at armyciviliancareers.com.
Welcome to Nada Yada Island. Next on Metro's Nada Yada Island podcast. I almost fainted when the 4 new phones arrived. 4 free Samsung Galaxy A16 5G phones at Metro. No way. And finding out the 4th line is free. Things got heated. That's wild. Join Metro and get 4 free Samsung 5G phones. Only at Metro.
Plus tax. Bring 4 numbers to an ID and sign up for any Metro Flex plan. Not available currently at T-Mobile or through Metro in the past 180 days.
Some people just know they can save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check your sunroof is closed first before driving through the car wash.
Whoa, 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 no, wait, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company. Affiliates of Norfolk, Illinois.
Hey Pedro, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I've been pretty quiet today. I think I might be getting a cold, so I figured I would just paint and listen to music. But feel free to, interact with the comments or chat if you want to. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a nice day.
scored the winning touchdown for the first time ever? Oh, did you even get it on video?
No, but I have a 360-degree view of this sleek blue SUV with the moonroof. You can get it for sale.
Oh, well, that does look kind of nice. Pop, look, he's going for another touchdown.
Instant online offers. CarMax.
Some people just know they can save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first at 888-ALLSTATE or allstate.com.
Like you know to check your sunroof is closed first, before driving to the car wash.
Whoa, 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 whoa!
second versus smart. So if you want to save money, check Allstate first at either Allstate or Allstate.com. You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Allstate Financial Insurance Company and affiliates, North Carolina.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for responding, Pedro. Yeah. I wonder what time it is where you live. That's cool that you have a cigar box ready to paint with tomorrow. That'll be awesome. They're fun. There are definitely a lot of pretty cool designs you can find online for those DIY little push-on boxes. But thanks for the compliment on the portrait. Yeah, I'm hoping maybe this will only be like a 2 or 3 session self-portrait, at least for the face, and then I can start working on, the rest of the composition. But yeah, it looks really yellow on screen. I think it's a little bit more of a greenish gold color in person, but on my screen it looks really yellow too. And it's helping in some areas, but I think in other areas it might be a little too bright and a little too hot in terms of temperature. So, I'm glad I tried it out, but this was definitely kind of a different undertone, ground color to use for me. I have friends let me think. I have friends that I went to college with who used to use kind of a mustard yellow underpainting or tone, but definitely depends on the palette and how well it's going to help or detract from what's happening in the painting. But I think I might take a quick 3-minute break here, 4-minute break, stretch, maybe get a bite to eat and use the bathroom, and then come back and keep working. But yeah, I appreciate you tuning in today, hanging out for a bit. I don't know how late it is where you live, but it sounds like we might be on opposite ends of the clock. Let me just move things back. I'm just gonna leave this up and take a quick break for a few minutes, so feel free to head out or stick around, but I will be back soon. All right, and we're back. Had to grab some tea. Oh wow! So Pedro, you're all the way over in Portugal. That's awesome. Actually, some of these images in my little slideshow at the bottom corner, those were little plein air paintings I made in Portugal last summer. My wife and I were there for 2 nights, and yeah, we had a really fun trip. We mostly went to Spain, but we took a train over to Portugal. I think it was Lagos. Well, wait, no. What am I thinking of? Not Lagos. Man, where did we go? And I think I have those pages in my sketchbook over here. Let's see, where were we? Yeah, we were in Lagos, Praia do Pinhao, I think. Pinhao? Let me see if I can share some of these. This was the first painting I made with gouache down by the beach in Lagos, and then these were the other two. I wish we had more time and we could have explored more of the country. It was really beautiful. The one city that we got to go to before coming back to Madrid. But yeah, the colors in the water and on the rock were incredible. Man, if Wisconsin had some of that type of, rock formations and some of those kinds of colors in the water, man, I could just do plein air painting every day. But yeah, I'd love to see some of your work. Do you have a website that you'd be willing to share so I can check out some of your artwork, or can we find your artwork on your YouTube channel?
All right, listen up to me. We ain't quit. We don't quit out on that field. We don't quit the game. And we don't.
But I'm glad you found my artwork on Instagram. So thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. I appreciate it. Yeah, plein air has definitely been a really great way to practice painting natural light, and it's a really fun way to meet more people when I'm outdoors painting. But on Instagram, I've decided that instead of having 2 portfolios or 2 accounts, I think I'm just gonna post everything to one of my 2 accounts for the future. But yeah, those little cigar boxes like you're talking about, they're I think I might have like 3 different ones now. One of them was a gift from a groomsman, one of my best friends. It was his groomsman present when he got married, so he gave each of us a cigar box, and then I ripped the insides out and cut a few little pieces of wood and customized it. Actually, another one of them was also a groomsman gift, so 2 of them have like some sentimental value. And then there's a third one that I've had, I think, since I was in college, and that one's still going strong. But yeah, it's nice to have a little painting box that can fit in a backpack if you're hiking around or on a bike or something like that. Some of my favorite little paintings were made with very small setups and small palettes, which is kind of nice, if you're used to having a larger mixing. I mean, this isn't very big compared to some palettes that artists have, but even this, is pretty small in terms of a mixing area. And one of the things I like about having a small palette like this is that it kind of forces me to keep using a few colors instead of having like a huge variety of pigments. even though I have at the most, I probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, maybe like almost 20 colors. I'm probably only using 6 or 7 at a time on a painting, so that kind of helps things stay more harmonious and less complicated. But yeah, let's get back into this painting. But thank you to everybody who stuck around and just waited for me to come back and keep painting. So if you missed the start of this live stream, I was talking about a painting by this artist, Giorgio de Chirico, who is an Italian painter. He was most notable as like an early 20th century painter. And a couple nights ago, I was looking up self-portrait paintings by, Western artists in art history. And, I had been looking at people like Van Gogh and Rembrandt and Frida Kahlo as some examples for inspiration for my self-portrait. As I've been talking about in earlier live streams where I was making drawings and kind of, thinking of different ideas and concepts for this painting. There were a few artists that I was looking at as inspiration, but then I saw a list of self-portrait paintings online a few days ago, and this painting by de Chirico was on the list, and I kind of forgot that he did some really just psychologically interesting self-portrait paintings, and this one was my favorite one that I saw because there's this double self-portrait relationship in the painting, and immediately I was drawn to this example because I was already doing a few compositional sketches where it was a kind of a double self-portrait in my sketchbook. So I'd been thinking about maybe trying something with this type of format, but when I saw his painting, I thought, wow, like that's a really interesting sense of space and almost like confrontation with how large his portrait is on the right side. I like how close he feels to us as viewers in the painting, and just that tight fitting inside of the upper right corner. And earlier in this session today, I decided to shrink things down so that there's more negative space, just because my canvas is a lot wider than his. They're similar, but mine definitely has a wider ratio. So I didn't like this proportion of pushing things up to the right corner, but early on in this painting right now, I'm just kind of using his composition as a jumping off point, and then I think I'll probably stop looking at his painting and maybe look at other artists' paintings as inspiration. But this is a different way of working than I normally would take, but because this is a painting for a particular juried show, I kind of want to take it a bit more intentionally and really think about a lot of different details and questions and ways of tying things into past examples from artists who I admire. De Chirico is an artist, though, that... Get a sip of my tea real quick. He is a painter that I've looked at for some of his other work. This is a book I've found. I think I got this from a sale, like a library sale years ago, but some of his still life metaphysical paintings are really inspiring and just have a surreal kind of nostalgic but also loneliness about them that I've always really loved. And there's just this weird sense of disconnect between the objects in his paintings. They don't feel like they have that much in common with one another. So there's this underlying randomness when I look at some of his work. I think there's for sure a lot of intention and references in his paintings that I'd have to do more research on, but some of those still life paintings that he's done are ones that I've really been influenced by, especially the way that he creates space in these like portals in some of those paintings. Let me see if I can find a few of them real quick. You know, things like this where it's pretty geometric and things have like a very sharp boundary, you know, and there's like these little cutouts of space. Those are the things that I typically think of when I come across his work or his name. You know, I see his name somewhere, but yeah, there's just like this weird uncanniness to his paintings because a lot of these are made by looking at inanimate objects, but they have this liveliness to them, you know. So this self-portrait of his that I've been looking at online, it's not in this book that I have, but I like that he's incorporating this bust kind of sculpture, and I like the way that relates to his posture of his self-portrait in the painting, that they're not looking at each other. You know, there's this interesting sense of time and this sense of perception of him looking at us. We're looking back at him, and he's also looking at himself through this sculpture bust that he most likely, you know, made himself or commissioned or something. So there's these levels of seeing one's presence in the world, you know, and I like that there's this interior space, but there's windows or openings to the outside world, but so much of this feels interior, you know, in terms of architecture, but also in terms of like an emotional, psychological perspective too. And then in the foreground with this little like tangerine orange, I interpret that as this, you know, piece of organic nature material that will eventually, you know, wither and fall apart, you know, just like us. So there's this moment of seeing oneself in the natural world, but I like that orange is stacked in front of this concrete, not physically like made of concrete, but this more permanent version of oneself, you know. And all of this is just an illusion through paint, right? So there's all of these interesting little levels to ways that I can interpret his painting, and I think that's kind of the degree that I want to push my painting, not in terms of the exact same reference material, but, you know, this idea of multiplicity and perception and, you know, existing in more than one way or in more than one material, I think is really interesting. So, I don't know, we'll see. I'll probably keep looking at a few other examples from other painters that I really like and create sort of like a Frankenstein of influence and interpretation. But let's get back to studying my reflection here. And I can very carefully give you a quick look at my setup in the studio here. So my mirror, you can see, is right over here. So that's what I'm looking at. You can see one of my guitars behind me. So off camera there, I'm looking at that mirror for reference. There we go. But yeah, I'm gonna have to keep this up while I keep my mirror up while I'm working on this painting. Hopefully it won't be too much of a burden while I'm working on other things. I have like 3 different types of work in progress right now. In case you're new to my YouTube channel or my other social media accounts, I started doing this eggshell painting series. They were kind of like originally thought of as like daily paintings, but I've only averaged like 2 a week so far. And I'm hoping to make 100 of these little like 3x4 inch floating eggshell paintings. So that's one of the projects that I've been working on. And then I am also working on building up a portfolio of work that is more illusory for illustration opportunities, or just for people that maybe want to commission work for me. That might be a nice portfolio to see examples of things I've worked on in the past in terms of illustration projects. But I've been working on a couple of paintings for that portfolio over the last 2 weeks, and there's a particular, call deadline that work is being made for, and that deadline I think is the end of March, so I have some time. And then this call for the self-portrait juried show I think is also in March. And before I forget, if anyone who's watching, or if you're watching the recording of this, if anyone's interested in purchasing or collecting, any of my artwork, keep an eye on my website. I'm gonna try this new model where I periodically open my online shop on my website, and probably like maybe once every month or once every 2 months is most likely what I'll do. And then I'll open it for like a 2-week period and then close it again and rotate the artwork that's available in my online shop. But the next update is going to be March 1st. So in a few weeks here, I'll have listings available with original artwork, some reproductions of my work that are in like traditional print, like museum giclée prints, but also a few books that I've published on some of my plein air paintings, which have been really popular. But I think this will help me organize my time a little bit better, and it'll help me prioritize this desire to like rotate my artwork through my online shop a bit more frequently. Excuse me. But I'm planning to have original artwork in this shop update that ranges in price. One of the nice things about Wix, which is the website, hosting site for my website, they offer subscription plans for listings that I put on my shop. So they're essentially like monthly payment plans, and that offers a really nice alternative for people who want to support and purchase my artwork but maybe don't have the full funds to make a purchase for a painting. This allows them to pay it off in X number of months, which is really helpful. And I've sold probably like 4 or 5 paintings that way now through my online shop. And the only thing that I ask then is that I don't ship the painting until after the last installment is received, but I haven't had any problems with clients that use that option. Everybody's been great to work with. The other thing I think I'm going to include in this update is 1 or 2 commission listings, where you can go on and pick a size for a painting, and then I'll probably offer a framing option for an additional fee. I can make a custom handmade frame for your commission. Those have been really great for people who are looking for unique gifts for a loved one, or maybe they have had an idea for an original painting that they want to have, and are looking for someone who can work from photos, or if you're local, maybe there's a local idea that we could do. Like years ago, I think back in 2018, I received a commission to make a small 8x10 inch painting in plein air of someone's childhood home. And it was kind of interesting because the woman who commissioned it is someone I met while I was in college. She is from Michigan, and her parents' house that they were selling and moving out of in Michigan was in the same area where I was going to school for graduate school. And she saw that I was local to that part of Michigan and reached out and said, hey, would you be interested in painting this custom, commission of my parents' house before it's sold as like a departing gift for them? Because I think they were moving pretty far away. And this was a home that, they raised all of their kids in, and they had a lot of sentimental value with. That was one of the most enjoyable commissions I've had. And it was, I don't know, it wasn't even my idea. Somebody else came up and said, would you want to try this out? And now I've been thinking about that, and I kind of want to create more organized information, or like a listing that offers that as an option for people who maybe would be interested but aren't even thinking about something, or maybe people would assume I wouldn't want to do something like that, but it would have to be pretty local to where I live. That's the only challenging part about that. Some of the other commissions that have been really fun are album artwork commissions. And those are pieces that I would put in more of an illustration portfolio. But I've been really lucky and or fortunate that some of my friends who are musicians have invited me to make artwork for album covers or singles. And those have been some of my favorite pieces to work on, because you're interpreting somebody else's music and art and idea, but you're also adding to a piece of art. And then a couple of those pieces have been pressed as vinyl, and we have copies of those records, which are really fun to play. My dog is starting to get kind of antsy and bored, I think, right now. I just let him outside, so I know he doesn't have to go outside, but and he's been fed. This is why I think he's just bored. This is where the painting process becomes really fun because I can start to narrow my focus and start sharpening some of the edges and tightening up some of the shapes, while also trying to incorporate more of the color and the chroma that I'm observing.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for anything your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year.
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free second look review. Second look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
What is Dax are you?
Tracking all our cars on Carvana Value Tracker on all our devices? Yes, Kristen, yes I am.
Well, I've been looking for my phone for
In Dax's domain, we see all. So we always know what our cars are worth.
all of them.
All of them. Value surge, trucks up 3.9%.
That's a great offer.
I know. Sell?
Sell.
Track your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker today.
Some people just know they can save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first at 888-ALLSTATE or allstate.com. Like you know to check your sunroof is closed first before driving to the car wash.
Whoa, 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 no, 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 wait, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah, checking first is smart. So if you want to save money, check Allstate first at 888-ALLSTATE or allstate.com. You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Norfolk, Illinois.
Alright, I think I'm gonna see if maybe he needs some water or something. I'll be right back. I'm gonna check on my dog, and actually I think I also want to see if maybe I can enlarge my painting in the stream real quick. I'm gonna try something. Since that's the area that I'm mostly working on. There we go. Cool. Alright, I'll be right back. What's going on, honey? All right. So he has food and water. Now if he comes back and starts nudging me again, I think he's for sure just bored. But the problem is that right now it's super cold outside, and when I let him outside, he can only run around for a few minutes before he wants to come back in because it's so cold. So he's gonna have to kind of hang out while I'm still painting. So just as a quick comparison here, let me grab that small self-portrait study that I made a few years ago. Hey Mark, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in. You know, with self-portraits, it's hard to not look like I'm tired or annoyed or, you know, really, really serious. But yeah, it'd be funny if I could hold a different expression. But anyway, yeah, this is a good comparison of, you know, how far I can get with different amounts of time. I think this was only like a 1 hour small little 5x7 self-portrait, and based on the stream we are like 2 hours into this one over here, so it's kind of nice to see those examples side by side. But what I was going to say too is today, really the goal of the portrait today is just to get things placed in the right locations, to try to get a sense of likeness, hopefully get some of the volume and, you know, softness of turning the form of the head. And then as this layer starts to dry, I can introduce more color and more chromatic layers of paint or glaze, you know, into some other effects. But it's fun. You know, it feels really good to do some portrait painting. And it's really fun to, you know, be sensitive to the way that things fall into the shadow and become harder to discern. So I'm trying to really leave things more generalized in this area and try not to introduce too many other colors or you know, proportions of shape. So let's keep going. Hello, Raynola. Thanks for tuning in. I hope I pronounced your name right. Thanks for the compliment too. Yeah, this is a fun project to start working on. You know, it's funny, I was saying this earlier today that I spent so much time trying to develop different concepts and ideas and themes to incorporate into this panel for the self-portrait painting, and didn't actually use any of them so far. So it's kind of funny how that can happen. Like you're trying to really plan and trying to be prepared and, you know, hopefully find an idea that you're excited about, and that doesn't always happen. So here we are But if anyone is tuning in more recently, let me put back up the Dekiriko painting that I'm kind of using as a jumping off point for my composition here. And Dekiriko is a painter that I really enjoy, and I just recently saw this painting online while I was searching for other artist self-portraits, and he's a painter who used to do a lot of these really kind of dreamlike, uncanny, surreal still life, and I guess you could say landscape paintings. A lot of them were like terrace, villa, architectural spaces. But his portraiture is something I kind of forgot about, and when I saw this painting, I immediately was like, that's kind of like the ratio of my panel that I want to do for my self-portrait, His is a lot more square than mine. They're both rectangles, but mine's a lot narrower in terms of the height, so I decided to adjust some of the proportions of scale in mine, and otherwise I'm going to probably mimic some of the symmetry of his painting, and then start to take things in my own direction. But just for those of you who are tuning in later on in the stream, I figured I would put that up for you to see in case you weren't familiar with some of his work. His name again is Giorgio Dekiriko is how you pronounce his name, but this is an example of one of those surreal still life pieces of his. All right, let's see what to do now. So I think my nose can move a little bit. So like I was saying, this is a really fun stage in the process because now I can start to tune some of the shapes and really be mindful of the edges of the shapes and soften things, or bridge areas of gradients, those kinds of things. A portrait of Sorolla done by Zorn. I'll look that up. That nothing's coming to mind, but maybe I've seen that painting somewhere online before. But that's one of the regrets I have about our trip to Spain last summer, Pedro, is that we could have gone to the Sorolla Museum, but I didn't really look into it as closely until we were in Spain, and I was like, well, we can go at the back end of our trip, because we flew in and out of Madrid, and I assumed that it was going to be open, his museum was going to be open on like a Monday, which was our last full day in Madrid, and they were closed, which was a big bummer. What I should have done is, spend a little bit more time researching different museums. I think I knew that he had a museum there, but there are so many other museums that I was like bookmarking, and I didn't really look close enough at like opening times and that kind of stuff, so I didn't get to see his museum while we were there, which was a bummer. But he's another person too that, doing a lot of the plein air events, his name gets brought up a lot, and he's not an artist I've really looked at a whole lot. I've seen a lot of his beach scenes, and maybe some like more interior paintings, but I might have to check out a couple books like from a library and sit with some of his paintings for a little while. But yeah, the Prado was where we spent a lot of our time while we were in Madrid. Fortunately, my wife, who's not an artist, was pretty accommodating and was willing to go there twice during our trip. Velázquez was, is and was one of my favorite painters, especially when I was still in grad school, and his Meninas painting was one that I took a lot of influence and inspiration from to complete my thesis work. So to see that painting in person was crazy. You know, it's like you look at a reproduction of something so many times and you kind of get used to the image of the thing. And then when you're in front of the actual object, it's this weird, like, I don't know, it's almost like an out-of-body experience, I feel like, because, you know, at the time I'm like, you know, well, I was jet-lagged the first time we went to the Prado. It was like our first full day in Spain after a very long day of traveling. And, you know, I wasn't really in the best mindset or condition to look at artwork, but I didn't want to waste any time. So we spent like 8 hours at the Prado that first full day that we were in Spain. And yeah, so when I was looking at some of the paintings like the Garden of Earthly Delights or the Meninas painting, you know, it was kind of like, felt like I was dreaming a little bit, you know. It was very weird in a good way, you know, because it's like I was saying, it's like you've looked at this thing, you know, countless times in books or on screens, but to see the actual canvas and to know like that's the object that he made, and that's, you know, that's the canvas that, you know, really influenced so much of art history following the, you know, the making of that painting, that like it's such a shared cultural artifact for human history. It just like, you know, it was weird. It was like this crazy, fulfilling experience. And the only thing I wish I maybe was more prepared for is just speaking Spanish and speaking the language to be able to interact with more people and ask more questions. Or not that I couldn't have asked questions in English, but you know, going to Spain and having opportunities to communicate with more people, you know, that's something I definitely regret. One of my favorite painters, I know if Mark Anderson is still watching, he's heard me talk about Antonio Lopez a bunch, but Antonio Lopez Garcia is one of my all-time favorite painters too, and I've seen clips and videos of him working out in public on like giant 5-foot or 6-foot plein air paintings, and deep down during our trip I was like, maybe I'll get to just spot, you know, or like stumble into Antonio Lopez by happenstance, and obviously that didn't happen. But you know, Madrid is a huge city. I mean, I totally underestimated how many people live there and how big of a city it is. So there was no way that was going to happen. But yeah, I'd love to go back at some point and view more works in the museums, and you know, go north, because we ended up going south and then to Portugal and then back to Madrid and home. It was like I think it was like a 14 or 15 day trip in total. The Small Works book from Sorolla. Nice. Yeah, thanks for the tip. I'll look up the website that you're talking about. I have seen some pictures of really small works that Sorolla has done. I think that might be what you're talking about too, right? Like little, kind of like little plein air sketches, I'm assuming. Yeah, there is like a immediacy with some of these master painters that worked in giant canvases. When you see their little sketches, they're so beautiful because there's this like this immediate impact of information, right? It's like they're not laboring over drapery or the figure or, you know, perspective in space. It's like this immediate, quick snapshot of their mastery and their process, and we're seeing them employ all of this experience in like an hour or 2 hours of time. You know, it's really cool to think about. But the other work I loved at the Prado was the Goya black paintings, that room of paintings, the frescoes from his house, was insane. I could have probably spent like a few hours just looking at those paintings and just like sitting with them, you know. That one with the dog, I can't remember what it's called. I've heard other artists talk about that painting, like Nicholas Uribe had talked about that painting once years ago, and I looked it up and I was like, wow, that's a pretty interesting painting. And I'd seen it, you know, a lot of other images of the painting, and then again, it's like you go there and you're hit by the scale of the artwork. And sometimes things are smaller than you imagined, sometimes they're bigger than you imagined, and a lot of those paintings from his home, the black paintings, were bigger than I was picturing. I'd heard that they were kind of like, almost like interior fresco mural scale paintings, but same thing. It's like until I was there and I stood in the room in front of those paintings, it's like, holy crap, these are substantial. You know, these are substantial paintings. And some of them were like very theatrical and like almost like cinematic feeling, like the ratios of them felt like this giant moving picture kind of. But Goya is another artist I really like a lot. I like his more kind of surreal stuff that he did, like the witches painting. That was one of my favorite paintings when I was first looking at his work. He did a lot of royal portraits too, right? I mean, almost like commissioned pieces. It is crazy. I mean, Spanish painting, like the history of Spanish painting is unreal. You have Picasso, Dali, Antonio Lopez. There's probably another 4 or 5 that I'm forgetting right now, but the ones that you mentioned too, yeah, it's kind of insane. That's why I was really excited to go to Spain, is because I knew that the museums were going to be packed with incredible paintings. A lot of them were, you know, big names, big artists that I've heard of or looked at in other, like I've been saying, in other reproductions. And it was just so inspired. It's like, I think that's the other thing that's really great about going to a museum is that, you know, it's going to sound kind of arrogant probably to say it like this, but when you stand in front of handmade artwork and paintings from people, you know, that lived 100 or hundreds of years prior to us, and this object is communicating something and connecting with me in a way that feels super personal and relevant, you know, it just feels, it's like this beautiful reminder that totally disregards some of what, in some ways, I think what social media like is supposed to do, which is connect people and like our voices and our process and our work, especially if you're, you know, in terms of artwork. But to have something that goes beyond the immediate moment or like this present moment in time, is really inspiring, and it's helpful, you know, because we live in such a fast-paced, information overload society nowadays that it's nice just to kind of slow down and really appreciate, you know, these objects that people poured their love and their time and their craft and, you know, their struggle and confusion and all of these other emotional experiences into. You know, it's so I think important to go and spend time with those objects. But man, the Prado also had, I wish I could remember the names of some of these other artists because I'd never seen their names or works before. These huge like masterpiece paintings in a couple of the big galleries that were like, these paintings had to have been like, I don't know, 15 feet wide, maybe like 12 feet tall, like maybe 20 feet wide. I mean, they were massive paintings. and the skill to create them was mind-blowing, you know. And the crappy thing is that you can't photograph any of the artwork in the Prado, which is understandable. I mean, it's such a popular museum. They have so many people coming through there, and it definitely helps protect the artwork. But, you know, for things like that, I had to just sit and write down all these names, which isn't a big deal, but I don't have like a visual, you know, example of the artwork that goes behind the name. So I have to sit and like look up all these artists again and try to find through maybe the Prado's collection online which paintings they had. But it's nice when you can get a photo, you can just flip through your files and go, oh, that was the painting I was super, you know, taken by at the museum.
You're in good hands with Allstate.
But yeah, we got to see Guernica, and I forget what museum that one's in, but that was pretty surreal too. You know, that's a huge painting, and it's just like, you know, being a painter, you know, you can look at these things, these objects, and obviously you can learn about the artist and their intention and the meaning of the work, you know, all that kind of stuff. But you can also look at it through just like a craftsman, you know, frame of reference, and really just appreciate like the material side of what they did, you know. You know, I've never been to London. I'd love to go at some point, but the National Portrait Gallery must just be like an overwhelming experience of, you know, of talent and inspiration, I bet. You know, some of my other favorite painters are British painters, you know, like Lucian Freud. I can't remember if Francis Bacon is, I don't think he's British, but he might be, or maybe he was. But that whole group in school, like Frank Auerbach and especially Lucian Freud, man, those people, they had some serious expression in their paintings. But yeah, it'd be fun to see more work by that group of painters too, British painters, or the artists that were living in London at the time. Like, I know people like Giacometti, I think he was from Switzerland, right? But didn't he interact, or like wasn't he friends with that group of artists too? It's hard to remember sometimes who is who and where they're from and who hung out with who. But there's just so much great artwork out there to be inspired by. It's amazing, you know, and it's great that all we need is a computer to be able to find and discover painters that are going to inspire us for the rest of our lives. You know, it's really cool. But I mean, those small Sorolla paintings I've seen images of are super beautiful, and it would be nice to look up to find more examples of those pieces, those small sketches. Pedro, are you mostly a landscape plein air painter, would you say, or is that just part of your practice or part of your process? Mostly plein air. Okay, cool. Nice. So do you get to travel quite a bit around Portugal to do plein air painting? or do you stay pretty close to your home and the area that you live in for painting? You get bored inside. Yeah, that is the nice thing about having, the tools to be able to take your process outdoors and paint from observation outside. Because I definitely can get stir crazy being in my studio for too many months in a row without changing it up. And the same is true for me if I'm just outside all the time painting from observation too. Like sometimes I start to feel like, well, I kind of want to get into more expressive and narrative painting and sort of activate my imagination a little bit more with the imagery that I'm painting. Because it's definitely, you're using your imagination when you're painting outside a little bit too, I think, because your subject is changing and you're having to paint from memory a little bit as you're working. But it's not like part of at least for me, it's like, I guess part of the goal of painting outside is to get better at painting natural, the natural light and how that describes things, and then also to try to paint things that I think are interesting for whatever reason, whether it's the formal qualities like the shapes and the colors and the texture, or if it's got some kind of significance in meaning, Cool. Well, yeah, what's the weather like for you in that area right now? I'm curious. So it sounds like you're kind of waiting to get back outside. That's hard to kind of sit and just sort of wait for things to kind of open back up again and be for the conditions to work for painting like that. It's hard when we're inspired, but it's like, man, I just can't get outside because it's not compatible right now. I don't know if you saw this, but I posted a video recently, like about a week ago, with highlights from a weekend plein air painting retreat in Wisconsin, and it was a really fun trip. And actually, Mark, who was in the chat earlier, he was there with a bunch of our other Wisconsin plein air painting friends, and everybody, for the most part, brought the right equipment to be able to paint outside. In like, I think the highs some of those days were like 27, 28 maybe a couple of the days. So it was pretty cold, but it's nice to have a group of people to try that out with, so that way you're a little bit more motivated, and at least for me it was really helpful. Yeah, it was a fun weekend, Mark. I think my favorite part about that was that we got, like, what, 6 of us got to stay together in that little cabin. It felt like camp, That was really cool. But Pedro, if you're still here, you should definitely look up Mark's work, Mark Anderson, if you're not already following him. He's an amazing painter. Wisconsin's got some pretty awesome plein air painting, and some, a lot of us, I think, also have a studio practice too, but most of us met through plein air painting. So that's usually what I say when I'm like, yeah, Wisconsin's got some great, plein air painters. Mark, do you think you'll get out and do some more winter plein air in the next few weeks? I feel like noses are really interesting forms to try to paint. They've got such weird shapes. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you have a workshop, right? And then Lighthouse, I think, already after that, right? Yeah, this year's already about to be in full swing for you, Mark. It's going to be pretty busy. Well, I guess based off what you're saying, it'll be busy for like a month, and then you'll be back up in this area, right? Yeah, it's been a weird winter. I mean, I could see it snowing still in April this year. I feel like I can remember times when I was in college up in Stevens Point, and we got snow in May, and that would be not fun. But I wouldn't mind if it snowed in like early April still. As long as there were a couple days that were warm enough for me to test out my smoker, our charcoal smoker that we got a few months ago. It's only been used once so far, so we really want to try out smoking a whole chicken. But yeah, it sounds like for sure you have a lot of stuff in the works in the winter. But yeah, anyway, let's see. How much longer do I want to work on this today? It's going, I think this is going okay so far. I like how soft everything is over here. I could see really bringing up a bit more texture and contrast in the face. I think that would really help convey that volume a little bit better, but I do think that some glazing in the future will be nice, just to get a bit more color in the skin. It's difficult because with the lighting that I have down in my studio, I just have this one overhead light, and there's not a lot of temperature in the light bulb settings, but the room I'm in is also fairly neutral, so there's not a lot of like bounce, environmental color that's reflecting onto my head either. So I'm gonna have to really sit and look until I start to see subtle, contrasts of chroma, which is, I guess that kind of is pretty normal for when I do self-portraits. Like I try to get like a base local color down in the skin, and then as it's drying, I will try to figure out where I can bring up the contrasts and that kind of stuff. Now that I'm looking at my cheeks again, I can probably put this little shadow for my glasses on my right cheek, or the left side of the portrait here. Let's see. Something like that. Maybe a little bit higher, actually. Because it feels like this one's a little bit too high now. Maybe it's... I need to adjust my neck, actually. Let's see. Actually, I think that shadow could be a little bit thicker, too. I'm going to try that and see if that looks closer to the reflection. It's always tricky when, like, you feel like one detail or side of the subject is reading well, and then you try to put the other side in, and then this one doesn't look like it's in the right place. So I think if anything it probably needs to be a little bit darker too. Not that you need more projects or things to do, Mark, but if you didn't already see the call for the Cedarburg Art Museum, they have a self-portrait call that I think closes to apply. I think the deadline is at the end of March, but if you already had a self-portrait painting laying around, you could apply still, or if you wanted to make a self-portrait painting. That's what this is for. It's been a long time since I've made a painting specifically for a juried show. I don't know if maybe only like 2 or 3 other times I've done that, but I like doing self-portraits, especially if I have space to play with narrative and other symbolism. So this is going to be a bit more in-depth than just kind of like a, you know, a study of my likeness or that kind of stuff. But it's a good excuse to practice observational painting too. Since it's been a while since I think that little self-portrait's the last one I've done from observation. And that was just a small little, you know, color study or exercise and loose brushwork, that kind of stuff. You know, and actually, I mean, anybody who's interested in doing self-portrait paintings, definitely consider applying to this call. I think you only get 1 entry, which that's a little bit unusual, I think, for juried shows. But so you might want to really start thinking about your entry. But they have a few small awards, I think. I think in total the awards are $1,000. I don't know how many awards there are, but it's a pretty cool museum, and it's a small historic home that was converted into a museum. But if you're local to like the Milwaukee area, you know, it would be close enough to deliver in person. I mean, even if you're a few hours away, it's not a big deal, but especially if you're local, I would consider applying. Okay, let's see here. This area looks a little funny. Actually, I can probably paint a little bit more of my chin. My beard hair is always kind of weird and challenging to paint because there's like this area under my lip that, you know, you can see a lot more of my skin, of my chin there, but it looks very fuzzy, you know, in terms of like the edges of the shapes. So I'm trying to think about soft patches of shapes here. Soften this area here. It is a very serious portrait, that's for sure. And you know, that's definitely going to factor into what I choose to paint in the rest of the panel. You know, I don't know. There are definitely some themes or recent conversations that I've had with like family and friends that I think, you know, it just feels like a good time to make a self-portrait painting and really think about where I'm at right now in my life and things that are happening and where I see the future heading, or reflections on the past. That kind of internal dialogue, I think, is actually pretty well timed for me right now. So this is probably going to be somewhat cathartic for me, I think. You know, I don't want to make anything that's trying to be too grandiose either. I think that's sort of the problem I was having with some of the drawings that I was making, the preparatory sketches, is that they were starting to feel like they were trying to be a little too, I don't know, like formulaic or designed, like with the content. And I think my favorite paintings that I've made are ones that start off with a very loose idea and then take one or multiple turns into different directions than what I was intending to do at the start. You know, I think those are my favorite pieces because they're more surprising to make. You know, it's like all of a sudden you're painting something and going, wow, this is a combination of imagery or symbolism that I was not expecting to be thinking about. And you know, I think for me, self-portraits have always been a very playful space or subject to just sort of follow my intuition of process and meaning and that kind of stuff. So let's see here. I'm trying to get the angle of things right. It's also fun just to do, you know, to use some of these traditional painting techniques like scumbling and, you know, glazing and chiaroscuro effects, all that kind of stuff.
Hey, Danny, welcome to the building. Want to join? We're going. Yeah, sure. Sweet, sweet. Hey, just wondering, what's your mother's maiden name? Wait, what?
Don't listen to him, Danny. And Fred. Focus on your own shit. Make your next move fast and easy with AT&T Fiber with all 5.
Yeah, Pedro, if you don't mind sharing, that'd be awesome. That way we can all check that out and view the work that you're talking about. Feel free to paste that into the chat if you want. Thanks. Bigger brush here real quick.
Purpose doesn't just come to you. You have to search for it. Whether it's deep in the forest or high in the mountain. It could be in a conference room or aircraft hangar or in a secure, undisclosed location. It could be just beyond wherever you are right now. With over 500 Army civilian careers to choose from, find your next level at armyciviliancareers.com.
Looks like I'm wearing some kind of uniform right now, or like if you've seen the Dune movies, some of the clothing that they wear has this like tight turtleneck kind of uniform. That's what it reminds me of. Kill Bill. You know, I've never seen Kill Bill. It's one of those movies that gets brought up all the time, and I can't relate to it because I've never seen it. Any of them. My brother loves those movies, though, so... You know, he's probably... If he was watching right now, he'd be like, told you to watch the movie. Something else about this expression that feels very, like, annoyed or... like sending a warning signal. That's kind of that's how I interpret this expression, you know. Well, and it's funny because I think when I'm really looking at a subject, you know, whether it's a landscape or a still life or myself or another person, this is probably the expression I have on my face, right? Because I'm just trying to make sense of the form and how it looks and compare things to my painting. But it definitely has this, like, almost, I don't know. It's probably the mouth, I think. A lot of it's the mouth, and it's this, like, side-eye look. But that's going to help me decide what to do in terms of the rest of the content in the painting, you know. Because I think what's funny is, like, if you have information in a painting that is already super, like, heavy leaning towards an idea, like, this could be interpreted in those ways. But if I combine it with information that's the opposite in tone or in, you know, quality or whatever, then it creates a totally different type of contrast, you know. So I could take it in either way. Thanks for hanging out with us, Pedro. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that this worked out with your schedule. And if you don't mind, could you also send me some of your links? I know you said that we might already be connected somehow on Instagram, but if you want to maybe message me on Instagram, it'd be cool to see some of your work and, you know, some of those things that you were talking about. But have a great night, and yeah, hopefully I'll see you in another live stream at some point in the near future. But thanks, Pedro. I also want to pull up the Kiriko painting one more time, just so I can see what his foreground looks like. because I think I might also try to copy his like little shelf thing down at the bottom there, and then I can put my own object there. I mean, his face is also very serious, but I think because his eyebrows are squinted together, that has a very different type of look. Mine definitely has more of the like, what do you want? You know, what type of type of expression. Now that I'm, especially on my screen, when I turn around and look at the stream, it has that feeling to it. But like I said, that might be kind of, I don't know, that might be kind of fun to work with, in terms of like a tone for the painting. But I know I definitely want to do a second portrait in some form or fashion. I don't really know what that's going to be at this point, but yeah, I have not seen Kill Bill. I'll have to put that on my list of movies to watch in the near future. I've seen a couple of the Tarantino movies. Because that's Tarantino, right, that directed those? I'm pretty sure those are his movies. I really liked Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I thought that was good. Reservoir Dogs, it's a classic. I like that movie. Didn't he also do Django Unchained? Is that his movie? I don't think I've seen that whole movie all the way through though, but I've heard, if that is his movie, I've heard really good things about that one too. You know, if it's not his movie, then it kind of doesn't relate to what we're talking about. Alright, so now I'm going to also hold my hand up kind of by my face, sort of like DeKiriko was doing, just so I can see the shape of my shoulder back here. You know, I can kind of rough in the area where the hand would go, but I think it would be interesting to be holding something or holding up some kind of a object or symbol or something. I'm gonna have to think about that for a while. It's also interesting to see a side-by-side of like the color of my skin in my painting compared to Giorgio's self-portrait, because his is so warm. There's like this golden olivey kind of color glow to his skin that mine will definitely not have, which is okay, but it's I don't know, it gives his painting a little bit more of a warmth to the feeling of the painting. So I think I'll have to think about that a little bit more too. Just like, you know, again, coming back to this idea of what's the tone, you know, what's like the atmosphere and the feeling I want my painting to have. How can color maybe help push a certain tone in the painting? Wait, let's hold up my hand again. my sleeve is it's kind of hanging way over here. I'm wearing this brown plaid jacket today. Like I said, this was the same jacket that I wore when I made that smaller color study. And I like the collar, like the shape that the collar creates. I don't know if I love the color like palette of the jacket though. So I might change that at some point. But for right now, I can at least figure out the values and the shape of the coat. I don't know if I've ever made a self-portrait that's this like cropped in, where, you know, if this was going to hang on a wall, my face is right up in the viewer's face, which, you know, I don't think I've really made many portraits that have that type of cropping effect.
Crystal Green is a highly efficient, sustainable, and affordable granular fertilizer that feeds your crops over 2 times the amount of available phosphorus, nitrogen, and magnesium throughout the season. This increase of plant-available nutrients keeps your crops well-fed all season for the yield results you want. Do not let your crops get hangry. Visit crystalgreen.com to learn more.
Concert information.
Master's degree, or taking non-credit courses to upskill, our expert-led programs fit into your life. Achieve your goals at your own pace with ACES Online. Learn more at acesonline.illinois.edu.
Let's see, Painter Head. I wonder, is that, I'm gonna guess, is that Christian from MSU? I wonder. That like little icon looks like his icon that he has. But yeah, super thin paint right now on this. Just kind of blocking things in and really going for a likeness in the painting. And yeah, it's a pretty restrained palette, I would say. Like, I've been using burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and then some of the warmer tones are mostly with alizarin, yellow ochre, burnt umber or burnt sienna, and a little bit of cadmium orange. But otherwise, it's mostly in the umbers. How's it going, Christian? Thanks for checking out my live stream. Hope all is well. Congrats on the baby. Looks like things have been going really well for you out in California and post grad school. But yeah, I'm working on this self-portrait for a upcoming juried show. So it's kind of a little bit of a one-off painting right now. But I'm taking this as an opportunity to pull in some influences from people like De Chirico. That's why I've got his painting up on the screen. Yeah, I saw your little logo and I'm like, that looks, or like the little icon, I'm like, that looks like Christian's Instagram icon. Are you teaching out in California? It looked like I thought I saw something about a class, a painting or drawing class that you were teaching, and you were doing a little bit of plein air projects with them. But yeah, I mean, if you could see my palette, this is really, really thin paint. Doing a lot of drawing right now. Trying to get things in the right spot. Yeah, my palette, I feel like my palette's always changing. I'm always trying different things. Teaching drawing and painting at some community colleges. Nice. That's good. I mean, I know it's pretty competitive, and I don't know what it's like out in California where you live, but I know here, like near Milwaukee, there's only a few colleges that have pretty robust art departments, and I think a lot of the faculty at those schools, I think, will still be working for a while, so I don't think there's going to be a lot of turnover based on what I've heard in this area. But that's cool. It seems like it's a really exciting time for you guys, obviously, with welcoming your first child. And you guys got married, was it last year? That was not too long ago too, right? I think. But yeah, with my palette, for sure. I mean, a lot of the thesis work that I made at Michigan State, there was a lot of self-portraiture in that work too, but for sure there was like neon color palette, moments weaving in and out of some of that work, patterning and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think for this painting, definitely trying to keep it pretty naturalistic to start out with, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Earlier in this live stream, I was talking about borrowing some of De Chirico's composition with the double self-portrait and like this foreground element here with his tangerine kind of fruit in the foreground. But the background, I think I'll probably take in my own direction or sit with a few sketches for a while and figure out what I want to do and how I want to fill that space. It's been a while since I've made work that was like super busy and packed with kind of like multi-narrative formats. At Michigan State, there were some pieces that I made that were heavily inspired by like Peter Bruegel, some of the Northern Renaissance painters. You know, I kind of like. There's a part of me that kind of wants to, incorporate some of that complexity into this painting too. Like really make it pretty busy with information. But I don't know. That's just how I feel at this moment. So that could change. But like I said, this is also kind of a little bit of a one-off painting just because of a juried show that's local to where I live. And I saw their call and thought, you know what? I haven't made a self-portrait, like a really thought out, even like kind of experimental self-portrait in a while. So that's what kicked this off. Who the other person whose work has been really fun to follow, with keeping up with what you've been doing too. I know you guys are friends or kind of in the same areas. I don't know what his first name is or if his whole name is Von Summer. I think that's right. But his like Crazy Cat paintings, those are super cool paintings. And I just saw the one that he had posted of the forest. It was like a big forest scene. But no, it's been really cool that you guys seem to, I don't know, maybe not collaborate, but hang out quite a bit, which is cool. Wow, we're almost at 3.5 hours for this live stream, so I'm probably gonna start to pack up here pretty soon. But I appreciate everybody who's stopped in today and checked out this painting. I'm gonna try to go live every time I work on this. That way, the documentation of the development of this is on YouTube. But Vaughn is a good friend of mine. Yeah, it'd be cool to see some of his work in person. They look really buttery, like the surface quality looks really satisfying based on pictures I've seen. But are you, in terms of like a studio, are you working at home or do you have a studio space or do you get space where you're teaching? How's that been going? Man, it's always funny that people that sometimes will pop on the live streams. It's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting to chat with you today. Raynola, thanks for hanging out and have a great rest of your day. Have a nice evening. I appreciate you tuning in for a while today. Thanks. Hopefully, maybe you'll be able to catch another one of my live streams in the future. I don't have like a schedule for these sessions or videos, but if you're subscribed to my channel, you should get notified, I think, once I'm live. But I kind of just go live when I feel like it, I guess, or when I know I'm going to work on a certain project like this. But since I have a couple things happening simultaneously, it's hard to plan out when I'm going to be working on something. Surfaces can vary. Huh. I think I remember you maybe mentioning that you guys had some teaching from Thibaut. That's really. I think I maybe saw some of his posts too, where like with what you're talking about, where he was helping us, as an assistant to his classes or studio or something, on Von's account or whatever. But yeah, that's interesting what you're saying about the surface quality kind of varying. Well, in that one that he had posted, that forest painting that he had posted like progress shots of or something I just saw, it's interesting. He was saying that he was working with charcoal and gesso, like in the drawing stages, which I've never tried that, or like I don't know if I've even seen other people work with gesso and charcoal like as an underpainting process. So that was kind of cool to see an example of that. And then the way that he was, I don't know if it was glazing over it or just, with very opaque paint painting over the drawing, the gesso drawing, but that was pretty cool. Yeah, that's cool. What you're saying about, kind of bringing together a lot of different languages in painting like that, I think is really inspiring. I feel like, I don't know, I think sometimes I'll hear artists talk about like wanting to really distill their process into like a uniform look and like formula, and it's nice when you find examples of people who are just like, why not bring all of it into the one process that you have as a painter and see what happens when you combine things together. It's kind of nice to be able to appreciate people who are doing that. I really like I like the kind of graphic, cartoony moments in his paintings that I've seen. There's another guy that I'm thinking of too that I wonder if you're following online. I think he was in Chicago for a while. I don't know if he's still in the Midwest or not, but oh man, I wish I could remember his name. He does these like really flat graphic paintings, and they're typically framed in like like boxy walnut frames. Like all of them have the same like black walnut finish in terms of the frames. And he has like very let me see if I can find his work real quick on Instagram on my computer, because he's a pretty interesting painter. But talking about like graphic, cartoony language, he's somebody that comes to mind. I wonder if you're familiar with his stuff. How would I even find his stuff? I'll have to like look him up and then maybe message his account to you, because I don't know how I'd be able, I can't think of anything that reminds me of his name, you know, and it would take way too long to go through everybody I'm following on Instagram, so I'll have to find him later. But man, I wish I could remember his name. He just like recently changed studios too. But anyway, he I think he's been doing some of like the art fairs, and his paintings have like fairly like pop color palettes. I mean, there's a series that he did that was sort of like nautical themed, I think, where he would use like these wave shapes and lines as a pattern through a couple of the paintings. Some of the paintings also have these embedded found objects in them. Like he'll put like hammer nails into the canvases, and that relates to the imagery behind the object. But yeah, I can't think of his name at all. Yeah, it's no big deal. I mean, I'm not in a rush to finish this painting or anything right now, but I just hate when it's like you can visualize someone's work, but then you're spacing on their name, you know? He might not even be from the Midwest. I don't even know, you know? There's another guy, though, who works with archived imagery from old animations, and he's working with embroidery. I don't know if you've seen this guy's work. I feel like his name is like Fredrickson or something like that. Might be the last name. And I feel like the two of them might be friends, you know? I think the other guy's name is Sean something. I'm going to see if I can find him if I look up Sean. This is going to bother me if I can't find his work. No, looks like it was not Sean. All right. Well, anyway, yeah, I'll make sure to send you his account when I find it. But it was fun to chat with you for a little bit today, Christian. I hope all is well. Take care, and best of luck with teaching and your work and everything too. But it was fun to see you in the chat today, so I appreciate it. Take care. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look him up later, that other artist. Dang. Okay, well, we are past the 3.5 hour mark here. I should probably start to finish up any last remaining areas here that would be easier to resolve while the paint is still wet. So let me just check a couple things.
Purpose doesn't just come to you. You have to search for it. Whether it's deep in the forest or high in the mountain. It could be in a conference room or aircraft hangar or in a secure, undisclosed location. It could be just beyond wherever you are right now. With over 500 Army civilian careers to choose from, find your next level at armyciviliancareers.com.
Some people just know they can save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first at 888-ALLSTATE or allstate.com. Like you know to check fuel up gas first before road tripping through the desert.
Empty? Seriously? Maybe I can walk.
Yeah, checking first is smart. So if you want to save money, check Allstate first at 888-ALLSTATE or allstate.com.
Maybe I can.
You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings there.
Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company, and affiliates,
I'm gonna look up this artist one more time because there's a name now that sounds familiar. That might be his last name. Yeah, Gannon. Sean Gannon. That's the artist I was trying to think of. So anyone who is still hanging out in this live stream and you might be interested in his work, let me see if I can link his Instagram in the chat. You can see what I'm talking about here. Wonder if this is gonna work. Oh yeah, cool. So anyway, Sean Gannon is the artist I was trying to think of, and he's got some really interesting paintings. Like I was saying, they're really graphic. They're kind of mixed media, some of them. Like he'll play around with objects that interact with the stretcher or the frame of the canvas, and they're really flat and kind of cartoony, but they have this like underlying sense of disruption and like, you know, discomfort to them, which I think that combined with the cartoony, almost like childlike imagery that you would expect from like a cartoon or a comic or something like that. The combination of those two things is really interesting. Hunter Potter is another artist that kind of works with some of those languages too. Someone else to check out. Might put his name in the chat real quick since I'm talking about his work too. I'm glad I found the other artist because that was starting to drive me crazy. Let's see. So Hunter Potter is the other guy to check out if you're interested. Okay, well, that seems like a good thing to end the stream on today. End things on a good note. This was a long session. I'm really happy with how far I got in my painting. I'm glad that I was able to get a, you know, pretty decent likeness so far and resolve a lot of the main formal problems in my portrait. Like I said, I'm going to try to make sure that when I work on this in the future that I'll share it in a live stream again. That way, you know, if anyone who wants to watch the making of this painting is interested, they can just go to YouTube and watch through or click through, you know, the recordings. It's a bummer if I don't record the whole process and then there's gaps. So I'm going to try really hard not to do that. But thanks, Mark, for tuning in and hanging out and interacting with the chat and everything too. I hope you're having a nice day and, you know, you're able to get some stuff done today that you wanted to get done. I will hopefully have watched Kill Bill by the time we hang out next on a live stream. That's part of my homework. But thanks for the support, Mark. I appreciate it. Okay, well, I think that's it for today. Thanks again, everyone. It was fun painting and finally starting my self-portrait painting. You know, after weeks and weeks of trying out different ideas with drawings, this feels pretty good. So. All right, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to share those on this video and I'll keep an eye out for them. So that's it for today. Take care. See ya.